You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cricket Podcast. Just a reminder that you can find us at the Cricket Pod on Instagram and Twitter. We're sponsored by Woodstock Cricket. You can see more details about them in our show notes. And you should like, subscribe, comment, help us break the YouTube algorithm with your love for us. Head over to Spotify, iTunes, Audio Boom, and and hit follow there. We're going to do a little preview of the England-New Zealand second test up in Edgbaston. Ross is going to be doing a lot of the talking here because he's going and he's going to drink lots of beer and he's very excited about that prospect.
Indeed. So it is the two-match decider, which starts on Thursday at Edgbaston. I will be in attendance. I'll probably be on the cider, not the beer. But big news out of the England camp is that Ollie Robinson, unsurprisingly, is suspended. So Dom Bess has been called up into the side, as always expecting Dom Bess to come back in from the cold after his abhorrent performance. In India. Should we talk a little bit about Ollie Robinson? I know that you touched upon it on the last show. All I want to say is, can this country get any more circus-like as the Prime Minister? So just to put this in a bit of context, we have often taken a bit of flack in YouTube comments and Twitter for bringing up and having a go at Modi and kind of having a bit of a laugh about Imran Khan, etc. We take the piss out of England all of the time, and this is no change because Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of England, has put his massive head into this discussion at the moment, and has come out in support of the Culture Secretary, who nobody's never heard of. No one's ever heard of the Cultural Secretary, and saying it's over the top. Max, where do you sit on that fence?
Let's we just briefly, because we've barreled into Boris Johnson and we definitely need to make fun of him because he's an idiot. But let's just reiterate what's happened since we last spoke. So Max, I think we did a summary of the first couple of days back on Thursday, and at that point we'd all seen the tweets. We knew something was going to happen, but the ECB hadn't said what. Since then, they have said that Ollie Robinson is suspended from international cricket pending an investigation, which is going to take place. The tweets themselves are juvenile, they are racist, they are sexist. He shouldn't have sent them. I think, we covered a lot of the content of that in the last show. And I think our conclusion was, the ECB probably had to do something, that they you can't have your day of unity as they said they were having. And then on that day, it turns out that you've got a black sheep or a rogue unit, and then not do anything to
it'd be too embarrassing.
Deal with that problem.
It'd be too embarrassing. It would undermine everything that they're trying to get to.
That's the problem.
And it's really difficult. Like you saw last year. I mean, there's 3 investigations going on at the moment in the ECB about racism. Like you can't then turn around and say anything like that. This is the bit that frustrated me, and why I kind of went barreling in, like Boris Johnson did to that small child when they were doing rugby. If you remember that video.
Yeah.
But like the suspension pending an investigation is a sensible thing to do.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got there's the context around everything that's going on at the moment, which is that's one thing to think about. The optics are not very good if you just have someone in there and go, oh yeah, it's fine, don't worry about it. And it sounds actually like they've taken a fairly sensible course. Well, we're going to remove you from the team for now. We're going to, look into this. We're going to make sure that actually, you've made a sincere seeming apology, ensure that you do have genuinely changed, that you have learned from it, that you are aware of your responsibilities, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll see. That's a totally sensible thing. And it's completely of absolutely no surprise to me that Boris Johnson thinks that it's totally fine for him just to carry on playing. Because if we look at some of the precedent that's been set by the current government, we have a situation where a man has been told by the person who is employed to look at ethics that one of his employees has been bullying people and definitely broke some rules, and he just turned around and said, "No, fine,
He's a racist himself.
Yeah. What about the racist columns he's written? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not being funny.
Which
yeah?
he actually refuses to apologise for. He just apologises for any offence that was caused.
When the ECB are on the other side of the culture war to you, you are on the wrong side of the culture war. The divide, when the ECB are taking the moral high ground, you're wrong. And I think in this situation, easily, like any other employer, are doing what they should be doing. You can't just have someone, well, with a public-facing profile, and published racist and sexist tweets on that public-facing profile. It doesn't really matter that it was 12 years ago. They were there for anybody to look through and be like, oh, wow, England have got a racist playing for them.
Yeah, I agree. And what I don't understand is how you can come into it. I can understand it because we know the kind of people who are in the government at the moment, of how they can just go wading into this and put their opinion. But why don't they focus on sorting out the rising levels of poverty in the country? Why not focus on saving the industries that are being decimated by Brexit that they caused or the pandemic? Why not focus on the latest wave of COVID infections that is due to their inaction? Like, there's so much other stuff they should be focusing their time on rather than Ollie Robinson and what he did 12 years ago. Cricket is already hard enough.
He might not even be the first choice player. Come on.
Yeah. But cricket's hard enough already to get into if you're not a middle class, privately educated white bloke. So let's not try and put up even more barriers at the highest level. What is going to be interesting, and Max, you're a man of process. You're a man of rules. The vetting process that ECB have put in for the rest of, like, they now have to go through every single tweet, and they probably should have done this already, every single tweet of all their existing players, because there's going to be something in there where there's like, oh my God, I can't believe he's done this.
There was stuff about Josh Butler and Owen Morgan today.
Yep. Like, I
mean, it's true. I don't know if they'll do anything about that, but people were sharing them on Twitter. It's they're going to have to do it. I think in a sense, that is also not dealing that. This was Michael Vaughan's suggestion. It was someone should have gone through his timeline and deleted those tweets before the day. It's like, no,
that fixes it. That fixes everything
them in the first place.
Let's just brush this under the carpet. Move along, everyone.
Anyway, look, I at risk of just talking about this for 20 minutes, and I am on a little bit of a timer. Should we move on to some of the actual preview stuff for this second test match?
Yes, so let's circle back around. Ollie Robinson cannot play, and he's been replaced by Dom Bess in the squad. Craig Overton is logically next in line for that spot, kind of similar type of bowler, can bat a bit lower down the order as well, and has had a good couple of years in county cricket. But the Bess inclusion could well mean that England's selection policy sometimes of picking a lesser spinner who can bat a bit is probably about to rear its ugly head again.
No, they're picking Leach.
Yeah, so I mean, it would be
they need to get a spinner in because the overrates.
Yeah, well, it'd be tremendously harsh on Leach, wouldn't he? Who I think positioned himself really well over the winter on spin-friendly wickets, but the other spinners kind of struggled for England, whilst Dom Bess fell to bits. Jack, some of the argument I've seen on here is that there's loads of lefties in the lineup for New Zealand. So Latham, Conway, Nichols, Santner, who I don't think is going to play. But if that was being factored into their thinking, then why is he not in the original squad? Because we're always talking about matchups on here. Dan Weston, I think, posted this kind of bit saying that Jack Leach's matchups are completely different to Dom Bess's matchups. So what is actually England's selection policy there? What do you think is going to happen, Jack?
I think Max is right. I think they're going to pick Leach, and they don't really, understand how those matchups work. Maybe, well, I'm sure they understand it, but it's not something that they think about when they pick players. I mean, honestly, if they were going to pick the next best spinner after Leach, they'd have picked Parkinson based on this year and based on Bess's recent performance for England. I'm pretty sure that Bess is in as cover, and they just want Parkinson to bowl in the blast because they see him as a potential understudy for Rashid in white ball cricket. And obviously that's the next phase of the county season. Bess won't be playing, so they can bring Bess in and he'll be sitting on the bench for someone, so it might as well be England. I think there's a reasonable argument you can make about New Zealand having a few left-handers, but I think also they could have they could line up with sort of 5-6 of their top 8 as right-handers. So I'm not sure that's entirely true.
Yeah.
And they have Joe Root in the side already, who can bowl to left-handers if you really need a spin option to bowl to left-handers. We saw him be quite effective in India, less effective in this match, but it is an option that they have. I don't really see what gap best fills, other than concussion sub or Jack Leach is sick on the morning.
They almost said as much in when they picked Bess as the cover. They were pretty much saying, with all the COVID protocols and the complications of getting people into the squad to provide cover, you just have to have them around the team already if they were to come in. So he is basically in there as a like-for-like replacement if something to happen to Leach.
Although, as we're acknowledging on this podcast, he is not a like-for-like replacement.
Quite.
In England's mind, though, same.
Yeah, same. Right hand, left
Do
hand.
that with the hands, don't they? Twist it.
So the other bits around Mark Wood and whether he's going to be fit enough to play. I think Anderson and Broad will get rolled out yet again together. But Mark Wood, can he go and bowl again? 4 days after going through 2 innings? I'll be surprised in that speed. And it is Ollie Stone's home ground. So what do we think there, Max? Do you reckon Mark Wood will get the nod?
I'd be playing Ollie Stone. I think. I mean, it's supposed to be a series about giving people a chance, isn't it? And Ollie Stone's. I don't think he's ever actually performed particularly badly at all when he's played for England. He's always turned up and done a pretty good job, and been a bit unlucky with injuries. Yeah, Mark Wood bowled a lot as we said in this test. So yeah, 100% Ollie Stone for me. I think makes sense.
And then finally for England, before I move on to New Zealand, is. England like to give players more chances than they actually deserve, and if their name doesn't rhyme with Mac Bleach, I suppose, and Zach Crawley is now on borrowed time. I think he's played 13 matches for England, and Rob Key 2.0 has only scored 687 runs at 31. That's not too dissimilar to the rest of England's batting lineup, so let's be fair to him on this one. And he has proven that he can kind of hit big runs with that 267. Against Pakistan last year. But every dog has its day. I know it doesn't really work like this, but if you took that single big score away from him, he's averaging 20. And he's got a propensity.
That is how maths works.
Yeah,
but it's not how cricket works.
But he's averaging 20 and he throws his wicket away. He's not the people, a long-term opening suggestion, as you said, Jack. The guy thinks he can just come in and he's like Hashim Amla from ball 1. Like it just doesn't work like that. It doesn't seem to have the mental side of the game at the moment to be in that position. But maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think there's an element of that. And he's young. I think something that might be good for him is to go away, work out because he can play shots. Work out which of those shots are risk-free runs, which of those shots are I'm in runs, and which of those shots just shouldn't really play in Test cricket. Possibly wants to work on his aptitude against spin as well. I know that's not really the problem in this match, but I think the career splits for his pace v spin or his pace v spin career splits. I think he averages something like 38, 39 against pace and about 12, I think, against spin. So there's some work to be done there. But I think there's something to work with. I just think it needs refinement out of the international game, where basically you have to go out and try and be your best in every innings. You don't have the space to be thinking about putting one of your shots away, for example, to test whether that will work. In the county championship, we play 14 4-day games. That's about a year and a half's worth of Test cricket in a summer. If I were England. They can't do it this year, obviously. Although he played a little bit, I think, didn't he, for Kent? But they can't do it this year now. But next year, I would think about giving him a full season in county cricket to try and figure some of those things out and see if he can bring that first class average up from 30 or 32. Because it's not just in Test cricket. He's actually doing better in Test cricket than first class cricket. Or maybe that's flipped around now slightly, but it's quite close. But if he can start averaging 40 in first class cricket regularly, then we can have another go. Is what I would do.
Fair. Okay, so we're thinking there's going to be 2 changes in all. We don't think Hamid's going to come in for Crawley. He's going to be given another chance. Ollie Stone, we do expect to see in place of Mark Wood, and we'll see Craig Overton more than likely. Jack Leach in for Ollie Robinson.
I suspect that'll be it. But you never know. It's England, isn't it?
Yeah, could well rest Broad and then see if we can fire him up for India. Who knows?
Could do. Long old tail. Otherwise, we might have to bring Overton in for Broad.
The Kiwis then, they bought an extended touring party, but I can't see them making any changes to their batting lineup. I thought Conway, great debut, as we've kind of talked about on the previous show. So there won't be any changes there. From 7 down, however, there are a few questions that need to be answered. The first being the workload on that bowling lineup ahead of the World Test Championship final. It's only, 10 days away, 11 days away. And Southey sent down 42 overs, Jameson 41, Wagner 40. So there is a bit where you decide that is a key part of your lineup. Do you want to then flog them again ahead of that game where you don't have a massive break? We've talked to Tim Southey bowled really well. And Max, do you buy into the Jimmy Anderson thing where he kind of says he'd rather not be rested? He'd rather, especially around that age, I'd rather not be rested. I'd rather continue playing. I'd rather get my body going through the motions in that thing and putting myself into that position. Or should it be a case of, do you know what, mate?
I think you have to listen to the player. I think no one's going to know their body better than the player themselves. And if they feel like they can string those 3 games together, then absolutely do it. I think. The question for me with New Zealand might be because I think Trent Bolt's just turned up, hasn't he? Basically, he's just he's seen that he might not get to play in the final if he doesn't make an appearance in the second test. So he's pretty much just announced himself. So maybe he'll be able to force his way in. I think it would be a shame if he doesn't get to play in the World Test Championship final. So maybe we'll see him in. Yeah,
I think there's no chance they won't pick Bolt. If I were New Zealand, Ross, I think you make a good point. I would swap Southey for Bolt, because you know that those two are going to play. I think New Zealand's best lineup is probably their 1 to 7, as you said, Ross. And I'd be tempted in England to ditch the spinner. I know that is risky, and there's some potential downside there. But I'm not sure Mitchell Santner's really offering you that much in the way of an attacking threat, or in England. And I don't think that will be the case for the World Test Championship final. So I'd have Kyle Jameson at 8, and then I'd play Southey, Wagner, and Bolt if I were the New Zealand chief selector, whoever that is.
Well, I think there is a bit around Edgbaston. It does take a bit of spin. I think is actually okay. Jameson looked absolutely shagged at the end. He was bowling no balls. He had been bowled into the ground. He looked like a wardrobe on its last wheel in the field. Is what I've written down here. De Grandhomme only bowled 7 overs on the final day, so maybe there's a niggling injury there. Wagner just does what Wagner does. He bowled 40 overs. I can imagine he'll do exactly the same. He might bowl 70 overs next week and be absolutely fine. But I agree, Santner was ineffective, and there is the option that Ajaz Patel comes in, who doesn't have a split index finger, which is rather important when you're a finger spinner. So they do have a couple of options there. I reckon there'll be 2 changes. I reckon they'll bring in Ajaz Patel. I reckon they will play a spinner, and I reckon they'll bring Bolt in for Southey. So that's what I reckon will happen.
That's a reasonable assumption. Should we make a quick prediction and then wrap up the show?
Yeah, I think England fans being back into Fortress Edgbaston will inspire them to victory, and I'll be in there at Holly stand singing my heart out to try and do that. Max, what do you think?
Okay.
Well, last time round, I said I thought England would win the first test because New Zealand wouldn't be ready, and New Zealand would be ready by the second test to come roaring back. And New Zealand looked pretty good in the first test, so I reckon they're going to absolutely flatten us.
It's a bit of a tricky one, I think. I think probably England for the same reasons I backed them in the outset. I think they're just better in these conditions. I understand as well that New Zealand were probably the better team at Lords, but they did only take 13 wickets in 200 overs against England. I actually counted this up. I meant to say it in the first segment. England's last 4 test innings before Lords, they'd lost 40 wickets in the same amount of time as they lost 13 against New Zealand. They're not as penetrating as people think. And I don't expect Broad and Anderson to be kind of as toothless 2 games in a row. So, that's why. That's my justification.
Yeah. Well, there we go. That is the preview to England versus New Zealand, the second Test match and the deciding Test match at Edgbaston that starts this Thursday. Lads, been a pleasure as always. Cool. Anything else to me to say?
No. Follow us at The Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram. TheCricketPod.com Patreon. Help us get to 25, where we'll retire before we come back in and go to 50. Woodstock Cricket in the show notes. Get your new cricket bat. Get all your other equipment there as well. And
leave us a comment
like,
if what you think about the teams. That's what you should do.
Help us win the algorithm. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
I think it was a disgraceful performance, and I think it should never be permitted to happen again.
That is very good.